1. Shock reveal. The moment Diddy broke. It happened fast, too fast for anyone to prepare. 1 second, the court was knee-deep in procedural jargon. The next, everything changed with a name: Prince. As soon as it echoed through the room, Diddy froze. Eyewitnesses say his body went rigid, then slumped. He lowered his head, pressing both hands against his face like he'd just been hit by something invisible. Something only he fully understood. Some in the courtroom say he looked like he was praying. Others swear they saw tears. A few claim he was muttering curses under his breath. But what's undeniable is this. After days of defiance and courtroom calm, this was the moment Sean Diddy Combs finally broke. Not when his accusers took the stand, not when the media flooded in, but when Prince, gone for years, re-entered the picture. The shock wasn't just emotional, it was tactical. Federal agents had quietly introduced the evidence before lunch, a previously unreleased audio clip tied directly to Prince's estate. It wasn't fan-made. It wasn't leaked. It was real, legal, and verified. As the tape began to play, even seasoned lawyers leaned in. The voice was unmistakable, calm, deliberate, precise. It was Prince, but not as the world knew him. This wasn't the stage performer or the cryptic interviewee. This was a man speaking plainly about something dark, about power, about control, about the kind of parties that didn't end up on Instagram, the kind of events whispered about behind closed doors. And then came the word no one expected. Diddy. He wasn't just mentioned, he was implicated. Subtly at first, then directly. The courtroom went silent as the recording seemed to reference Diddy's now infamous freak-offs. Gatherings long rumored online, but never spoken about under oath. And yet here was Prince, posthumously entering the courtroom with a message many believe was meant to be heard only after his death. A warning that had finally come due. And it hit like a bomb. The timing? Too perfect to be coincidence. The tone? Chilling. And Diddy's reaction? Proof that whatever came next, this trial had officially crossed into dangerous new territory. 2. The audio's content. Prince's posthumous warning. What started as courtroom evidence quickly became something else. A reckoning. The audio wasn't grainy or vague. It was clear, intentional, and undeniably real. Prince's voice, smooth yet edged with quiet urgency, filled the room like a ghost speaking truth no one had dared to confirm. He wasn't speculating, he was documenting. Insiders say the clip didn't just reference Diddy in passing, it painted a picture. A world of exclusive, no-phone parties, of secrets sealed behind NDAs, of celebrities stripped of their public personas the moment the doors closed. But the biggest shock wasn't the mention of Diddy. It was the tone. Prince wasn't accusing with rage. He was warning with resignation, as if he'd tried to sound the alarm before and no one listened. He referenced freak-offs in a way that suggested first-hand knowledge, not hearsay. He described the industry as a machine that chewed people up, especially those who knew too much. And he seemed to know who was behind the wheel. And then came the moment that left even legal teams shaken. A cryptic phrase buried in the audio that has since become the most dissected line of the entire trial. Prince said, "I don't entertain none of this nonsense, and nothing over the phone. I'm going to need you to get rid of all the leftover pizza boxes." At first it sounded like a tangent, random even. But as the courtroom replayed the audio, that line landed like a thunderclap. Because investigators had recently unearthed court transcripts where Diddy himself had reportedly referred to the Prince recording as pizza boxes. The phrase suddenly carried a sinister weight. Was it code? A known euphemism among insiders? Or something darker? An indirect confession, now recontextualized in real time. One thing was clear. Diddy's panic wasn't just about what Prince said. It was about the proof Prince left behind. Because if this was only one clip, how much more was out there? And who else did Prince talk about before he died? What made this moment truly historic was that it wasn't a rumor gone viral. It was evidence played aloud in a federal courtroom. And it shattered the illusion that the whispers surrounding Diddy were just tabloid noise. For the first time, they were facts. And they came from one of the most respected, enigmatic voices the industry has ever known. Prince didn't live to see this moment, but his voice, it's still speaking. And now it's speaking louder than ever. 3. Diddy's coded panic. Pizza boxes and panic buttons. Diddy's breakdown wasn't a one-off moment, it was a trigger. And what followed made it clear this wasn't just emotional collapse, it was panic. Controlled at first, but spiraling fast. Because the courtroom wasn't just hearing Prince's voice, it was decoding it. That phrase, the pizza boxes, became the axis everything started to spin around. Investigators had already stumbled across the term buried deep in court transcripts, traced back to Diddy himself. He'd used it cryptically when referencing a problem tape tied to Prince. At the time, no one had context. Now they did. And the coincidence felt far too calculated. Suddenly, what sounded like casual slang became something more chilling: code. People who had once brushed off conspiracy theories were now scrambling to revisit old interviews, archived footage, and statements that once seemed like nothing. Pizza boxes wasn't just an odd phrase anymore. It was potential confirmation that Diddy had been aware of the tape, feared it, and may have been actively trying to keep it buried. The question wasn't if he knew, it was how much he was hiding. But the tape was just the beginning, because the moment it ended, everything else started to unravel. Almost immediately, prosecutors began introducing new names no one expected to hear. This wasn't just about Diddy and a handful of accusers anymore. This was about high-profile celebrities, still active and influential, now being quietly pulled into the narrative. From Kid Cudi and Britney Spears to Michael B. Jordan and Dallas Austin, the list started growing. And fast. Some were allegedly present at the same parties Prince had referenced. Others were said to be part of the same inner circles. But none of them were prepared for their names to show up here, not like this. Courtroom observers say the atmosphere shifted from shock to unease, because the deeper this tape pulled the thread, the more it felt like everything was connected. And Diddy wasn't the only one with something to lose. Sources close to the case suggest the panic wasn't just personal, it was collective. And what's worse, investigators believe Prince's recording might not be the only one. If there are more tapes, more testimonies, or more names hidden behind code words like pizza boxes, the case won't just rattle one man. It could shake the foundation of the industry itself. 4th, Prince and Diddy's secret history. The house, the footage, the warning signs. The connection between Prince and Diddy wasn't just theoretical, it was physical, real-world, documented, and now central to the storm brewing in court. What shocked investigators and later the public wasn't just the content of Prince's audio, it was where the alleged behavior happened. Because according to multiple witnesses, at least some of Diddy's infamous parties, the ones now whispered about like urban legends, took place at Prince's own estate. That's right, the Purple One's legendary home, the very compound that symbolized artistic freedom and spiritual energy, had reportedly been used, at least temporarily, for something very different. And that detail came straight from a trusted source. Jason Lee, media insider and CEO of Hollywood Unlocked, who admitted on record that the first Diddy party he ever attended happened at Prince's house. He described the scene as surreal. Tyrese was performing. Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore were swinging on literal swings. A-listers, influencers, models, all behind gated walls. But what set it apart wasn't just the guest list, it was the control. No personal security was allowed inside. No bodyguards, no phones. Only NDAs, handlers, and the kind of unchecked access that raises more questions than answers. And Prince? According to people close to him, he knew something wasn't right. Reports suggest he had grown increasingly uneasy about what was happening inside his own walls, particularly when he wasn't there. So much so that he allegedly began monitoring the estate himself. Some say he even obtained footage, actual video recordings, of the events unfolding during those parties. And while none of it has been made public yet, insiders say it was enough for Prince to start quietly speaking out, dropping warnings in interviews, cryptic messages in songs, and finally, this tape. That's when things started to spiral. Because this wasn't just about two celebrities crossing paths. This was about one man trying to hold the industry accountable and another possibly using the very system that silenced so many before him. Prince, the artist who changed his name into a symbol just to escape a corporate contract, wasn't just fighting for his music, he was fighting for truth. And Diddy, the mogul who had risen through those same corporate ranks, might have been the target all along. Now, with footage allegedly out there, and with federal agents already in possession of a verified Prince tape, the court and the public are left wondering, how deep did this go? Did Prince plan to expose it all before his death? Was he building a case of his own? And if so, was he silenced before he could finish what he started? 5. A pattern of death and silence. The ones who knew too much. If Prince's death felt sudden, it's because it was. But as the courtroom tapes surfaced and whispers turned into sworn testimonies, a pattern began to emerge, and it wasn't just tragic. It was terrifying. Because Prince wasn't the only one who had allegedly started talking about Diddy before dying. Another name kept coming up, again and again. Kim Porter. Diddy's longtime partner, the mother of his children. A woman known for her silence, and then, just before her death, for what she was about to say. Multiple sources have now claimed that Kim was preparing to come forward, that she had something to say, secrets to expose. And just like Prince, she never got the chance. She was found dead in her home, suddenly, in what was officially ruled pneumonia. But those close to her have never believed that, and neither do fans. Because what tied Prince and Kim Porter together wasn't just the timing of their deaths. It was the content of their warnings. Both had allegedly begun expressing concern about the same circles, the same parties, the same man. Both were reportedly collecting evidence. Both were said to be planning to speak. And both were gone before they could. Then came the bombshell that made it impossible to ignore. A suicide note, supposedly written by Prince, was found by an employee at Paisley Park. It read like a goodbye, a cry of pain, an admission that he needed to stop the pain and let go. But for fans who had followed Prince's every word for decades, it didn't read like him at all. The phrasing, the tone, none of it felt authentic. Online communities dissected the note line by line, pointing out inconsistencies in syntax, grammar, even handwriting. Many now believe the note wasn't written by Prince at all, be it forged. Even law enforcement appeared hesitant to go deeper. One sheriff, during a press conference on Prince's death, said flat out, "There are people involved." But when asked for names, he refused. It was as if something or someone had made it clear there were lines he wouldn't be allowed to cross. And then came the final crack in the official story. Diddy's former bodyguard, a man who'd spent years inside the circle, went on record and said what so many had been afraid to voice. Kim Porter, he claimed, didn't die of natural causes. She was murdered. His words weren't vague. They were direct. There was foul play in her death, a lot of foul play. At this point, it no longer felt like coincidence. It felt coordinated. Like every time someone got close to revealing the full picture, something stopped them. Forever. Prince and Kim Porter. Two people allegedly linked not just by Diddy, but by what they knew. Two voices silenced before they could speak in court. Two deaths that, in light of the recent trial, feel far less random than they once did. And now, with one tape already shaking the courtroom and hints that more could surface, people are asking, what exactly did they know? And how far was someone willing to go to keep it hidden? 6th, industry warfare. The battle Prince fought, the empire Diddy built. Long before the courtroom tapes, before the parties, before the pizza boxes, Prince had already declared war, not on a person, but on the system. He called the music industry modern slavery, not as a metaphor, as a warning, and for years the world saw it as artistic rebellion. But now, with Diddy at the center of federal investigations and Prince's voice rising from beyond the grave, people are starting to wonder if he was trying to warn us about something, or someone, specific. At the height of his career, Prince was one of the few artists bold enough to fight his label, and win. His war with Warner Brothers was legendary. He protested their grip on his music, their ownership of his name, and the contracts designed to keep artists powerless. He changed his name to a symbol just to break the deal. He wrote slave on his face in protest, and while fans praised him for his artistic courage, what many didn't see was just how deep that resistance ran. Behind the scenes, Prince wasn't just rebelling, he was watching, tracking, documenting. And while he was fighting to reclaim his masters, Diddy was doing the opposite. He was building an empire, signing artists, launching Bad Boy Records, making deals with the very corporations Prince warned about. Years later, Warner Brothers, yes, that Warner Brothers, bought a 50% stake in Diddy's label. Suddenly, the same company Prince had battled was now co-owning the legacy Diddy built. For fans paying attention, the irony was impossible to miss. While Prince spent decades trying to escape the machine, Diddy became part of it, even profiting from the same legal structures Prince called predatory. But this wasn't just about business. It was about how people were treated inside the system. While Prince fought for artists to own their work, Diddy's name kept surfacing in stories about withheld publishing rights, long-standing financial disputes, and verbal abuse. Artists who once stood beside him, cherished names like Maze, The Lox, and Danity Kane, have all at some point spoken out. Not with gossip, but with receipts. Claims of missing money, allegations of control. Artists who felt like they gave more than they got, both creatively and emotionally. And if Prince saw that happening, if he recognized in Diddy the very corporate behavior he'd spent his life trying to dismantle, maybe that's why he recorded what he did. Maybe he knew the party rumors were just the surface, and that the real danger was structural, that behind the champagne and red carpets, artists were still being used, discarded, silenced. So when Prince said the music industry wasn't run by musicians but by accountants and lawyers, it wasn't just a throwaway line. It was a map, a glimpse into an industry where power didn't just corrupt, it silenced. And now, as Diddy faces legal fire and Prince's recordings shake the courtroom from the grave, we're left with one haunting question. Was this always a battle between two artists? Or a war between two visions of what the industry could be? 7. Testimonies from beyond. The ones still speaking. Even in death, Prince wasn't alone, because while the industry tried to file him away as a tragic icon, his inner circle never stopped speaking. And what they've said in recent years is now taking on an entirely new meaning. First came his sister, Tyka Nelson. Her voice cracked in an interview that barely made headlines at the time, but today plays like a premonition. When asked about his death, she didn't say she was shocked. She didn't say it was sudden. She said, "I had been preparing for 2 years. I knew it was coming." Her words hit like a slow burn. She claimed Prince had told her he'd done everything he came to do, that it was time. But what did he mean by that? Had he seen something coming, not because of health, but because of what he was about to expose? Fans who once brushed it off as spiritual speak are now looking back at that moment with new eyes. Did Prince know they were coming for him? Then came his fiancée, the woman closest to him in his final days, who revealed something even more haunting. According to her, Prince had been making calls behind the scenes, quiet warnings, private conversations, and in one of their final exchanges, he looked her in the eye and said the words she can't forget. "They're killing artists." He didn't mean metaphorically, he meant it. The warning didn't stop there. Legendary musician and Prince's longtime friend Sheila E. was caught by reporters outside an event and asked about his death. But instead of offering a polished, media-trained answer, she stared straight into the camera and said what millions were thinking, but afraid to voice. "We're going to find out what really happened." No sadness, no speculation, just quiet certainty, and maybe even a hint of fear. And then, in the most unexpected twist, Candace Owens, a conservative political commentator known more for politics than pop culture, joined the conversation. She posted a video claiming she planned to investigate Prince's death herself. And while her audience and Prince's couldn't be more different, the very fact that people outside the music world were connecting the dots only deepened the mystery. Owens suggested that Prince's death might be linked to a larger pattern, a disturbing timeline that included Michael Jackson, Kanye West, Justin Bieber, and now, Diddy. Each of them, she claimed, had spoken out, and each had been silenced in one way or another. The deeper this goes, the more Prince's death stops feeling isolated and starts feeling orchestrated. These testimonies aren't coming from tabloids or clickbait. They're coming from people who loved him, people who shared his last days, people who say in no uncertain terms that he knew what was coming. And if the court continues to unseal evidence, if more recordings, files, or statements come to light, the industry may finally be forced to answer a question it's avoided for years. Was Prince silenced not because of what he created, but because of what he knew? 8. Final words and unanswered questions. The warning that wasn't heard. As the dust settles around the courtroom and the Prince recording continues to echo in headlines, one thing is clear, that this was never just about a party, or even about one man. This was about a legacy, a battle, and maybe even a prophecy. Because long before Diddy was forced to face a jury, Prince tried to warn us all. In his final public appearances, Prince didn't name names. He didn't need to. His message was always layered, lyrical, symbolic, cryptic, but intentional. He told young artists to watch who they trust. He told them to own their masters. He told them to stay away from the giants, the people at the top, the ones who seemed untouchable. Looking back now, it wasn't a speech, it was a goodbye letter. Not to his fans, but to the industry. And hidden in that letter was a final act of rebellion. The audio played in court may just be one piece of it. If Prince really was collecting evidence, if he really had files, tapes, or knowledge stored away, then what we heard could be just the first drop in a flood. And if he was taken out before he could release it, we have to ask, who else helped silence him? Who benefited from his silence? And why, years after his death, is his voice still doing what it always did, breaking systems wide open? And what about Kim Porter? She died just months after allegedly telling friends she had secrets about Diddy. She was reportedly writing a memoir, gathering documents, planning a sit-down. And just like Prince, she didn't live to tell her story. Was it a coincidence? Or was it another pattern? Another silencing? What's haunting now is that the most powerful revelations in this case aren't coming from prosecutors or reporters. They're coming from the dead. From Prince, from Kim. From those who lived close enough to see the truth, and dangerous enough to want it revealed. Their voices are still here on tapes and transcripts and testimonies. But the question is, will the world finally listen? Because if what Prince hinted at is real, if Diddy's pizza boxes were more than just metaphor, then the industry may be standing on the edge of the most explosive reckoning in modern music history. One where artists aren't just fighting for credit, they're fighting for survival. So now we're left with the questions that won't go away. Was Prince's death really just about pills or about what he was about to release? Was Diddy's courtroom breakdown a reaction to exposure or the fear of what's still to come? And if more recordings exist, who's next? We've heard from Prince's sister. We've heard from his fiancée. We've watched the court tremble at the sound of his voice. But the final question might not be what he knew. It's what we'll do with it now. Do you believe Prince's tape was just the beginning? Is the truth still buried, or finally clawing its way to the surface? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more.